All right, y'all. What's good? Welcome back to the Onyx Report, Black Masculinist news for the day. Let's see here. Yeah, getting in a late one. Actually, just finished teaching, so got a different schedule than I normally do. But oh wow, my whole screen went blank in terms of all the comments. It didn't look like anyone was there. Shout out to everybody here. Jay Cleveland, what's good? A few brothers up in here. Let's see, Fred. What he had a soul. What's going on? Spain man, what's up? You know, a number of people in here. Afro Nerd, what's going on? Give me the info on your new show or where you at. You are Afro Nerd. Dr. Thunder, what's good? Hope you're good, man. Shadow Observer, what's up? All right. Brother Truth Be Told, what's going on? Mr. Z, what's up? Doing some interesting work there, Mr. Z. Shout out to you. Electrician 480, what's going on? All right. Got Gail at night. What's good? Gabriel Meth. All right. So let me just jump in. Shout out to Great I9. Appreciate that. Like, share, subscribe, join, and donate. Support the show if you will, so we can continue to bring you this independent black male thought. So that said, go ahead and jump in now. I am going to be mostly talking about, something having to do with law enforcement. I'm going to get into some of that. But before I do, this kind of came out of nowhere. And I'm trying to get this done because I really want to go catch a late flick tonight. So I'm going to see if I can get this in because it's on my mind. Right. So a brother reached out to me on Twitter and was asking me about black entrepreneurship. Shout out to Queen Kalila. What's going on? He was asking me about entrepreneurship. He was asking me about, black men, black women, own businesses and some of the data around it. And he was finding it hard to find. And sometimes I do shows on data, but I use data quite a bit, but sometimes I don't catalog it well enough. And so it's hard for me to find something I, did a show on a year ago. Right. So anyway, he asked some questions about black men owning businesses, black women, and he was saying everything he found talked about black women. And the interesting thing is when you look at it, once you see them start really playing with the language, and I'll show you what I mean in a second, that's when you know there's something going on that needs to be called out. So just so you can see, what I noticed when I was doing a search about rates of entrepreneurship, numbers of black businesses owned, I did several, different little Google searches. One of the things I found is you very rarely found any straight numbers on black men. What they did is they talked about the rates by which black women are creating businesses, rates as they compare to white men, white women, Asians, Latinos. Very rarely, if at all, do you actually find anything about black men in comparison. See, what they use is they do flat blackness. They either tend to talk about black business ownership, black entrepreneurship, or black women's entrepreneurship. Black men in particular, not really a subject as far as most are concerned. And if you leave all of the fanfare and attention around black women, if you allow that to establish for you, the state of black business, you walk away thinking, black men aren't doing anything. Shout out to Afro National for the support. Says salute to you as well. Shout out to Great I9, of course. Appreciate that. Brother Ian in the house. Good to see you, Ian. I ain't seen you in a little minute. Hope you're well. See, Mr. Z says, I checked out your interview. I checked out a portion of it. Yeah. I'm down to do it whenever, but it looks to me like he wants to talk to Gigi. And actually, I'm game either way. But as far as I'm concerned, nobody sent me an invitation or nothing. So, I left it at that. But you did well. Shout out to Mr. Z. If you haven't checked out Mr. Z's channel, please make sure you do so. Just look up Mr. Z right here on YouTube and, check him out. He's been doing some interesting work lately. So anyway, this entrepreneurship thing. So it's either black, flat blackness or it's about black women. And I'll show you what I mean. So here's a couple websites. These just came up as I was doing my search, right? Black women are more entrepreneurial than white men, right? Why black women are the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs. Right? Black women are embracing entrepreneurship at historic rates, and they mean business. Right? Black women are among the fastest growing entrepreneurs. I didn't even look. I didn't go looking for these sites. I literally put in one search about Black entrepreneurship, and all of these came up. Not one article on Black men. Not at all. Right? Some more statistics on this one was an interesting one. Let me see. Black women are the country's leading entrepreneurs. Right? But this one was interesting. So on this article here, places with the most Black-owned businesses. Shout out to Electrician 480. Support our PhDs. Appreciate that. Again, support the channel if you will. You see the different, you will in a moment, different ways you can do that. Venmo, PayPal, Cash App, and of course right here on YouTube. So support the show if you will. But on this website, places with the most Black-owned businesses, that doesn't at all tell you that you're about to get any information other than where to find Black-owned businesses. But if you scroll almost toward the bottom, you see something interesting, right? And another thing, if you search Black men on many of these articles, you won't find anything. Not one mention. Not one. The only men they talk about in relation to this are other groups of men, right? So listen to this sentence here. Right, well, I'll start with this heading right here. So Black businesses are more likely to be women-owned than the national average. So this is what I meant when I said you're going to see them dancing around the words, playing with the language. Black businesses are more likely to be women-owned than the national average. It says nothing about Black men, leaves you with the impression that Black men aren't doing shit, right? That's kind of underlying idea that you seem to walk away with. Then the following sentence. Though just a little more than 1 in 5 or 20.9% of all businesses in the U.S. are women-owned, 35.4% of Black-owned businesses are owned by Black women. This means that Black-owned businesses, now listen to the takeaway, right? So 35.4% of Black-owned businesses are owned by Black women. Great. Then it says, this is their takeaway from that. This means that Black-owned businesses are more likely to be owned by women than the national average. The takeaway isn't that Black men are being far more productive than they've ever gotten credit for. That's not the takeaway. There is no mention of Black male entrepreneurship. None. What you find in another article, one of the ones I went through, I'm not going to go look for it, but roughly they say there's about 2 million Black businesses in the United States. Now, Black women own 35.4% of those businesses. That means roughly that's about 700,000 businesses, right? They run about 700,000 businesses. That means Black men have about 1.3 million. So 2 million total businesses, Black businesses. Black men run 1.3 million of them. When's the last time you actually saw any philanthropic grants, any of that extended toward Black male entrepreneurship? When's the last time? In every other community, yes, it is standard. Men tend to own more entrepreneurial businesses. But when it comes to the Black community, you hear more fanfare about Black women. So much so that when you look at government grants, when you look at philanthropic grants, much of it is either targeted to this generic Black idea or it's targeted to Black women. 10% of Black-owned businesses are run by LGBT, but no mention of Black men specifically. I find that a little suspect. F Holiday, appreciate that Cash App. Brandon, good brother, appreciate the support. Thank you for that. Shout out to Electrician 480. Right? But yeah, that's what we're seeing. So I just wanted to kind of put you on game. When I talk about the invisible, making Black men invisible, like I did in my last video, this is partly what I'm talking about. So you can continue this, at least this short portion of today's video, to be kind of a part 2, where you can actually see what I mean. There's a severe downplaying of Black men. Now, I do believe that Black women get more support. As I said, governmental support, philanthropic support. I do believe Black women-owned businesses get more of that. And of course, they get more media support. Now, media support in and of itself is a form of promotion in a way, in a serious way. You look up Black female entrepreneurship, not only are you going to find more articles about that, you will also find them giving examples, which is free promotion. Now, my suspicion is that many Black men don't frame their businesses as Black male-owned businesses. Why? I don't think that necessarily yields them more profit to do so. We don't really fall into a niche where Black men doing well, entrepreneurially speaking, it secures them more support. That's my suspicion. I'm not saying I have anything to back that, but that's my suspicion. So in essence, there's something going on here. Something going on here. Let me see here. Come on. System is kind of freezing for a second. There we go. So anyway, 64% of Black-owned businesses run by brothers. So shout out to those brothers. Anybody out here that's doing your work as an entrepreneur, I take my hat off to you. I tip to you, and tell you to keep it pushing, man. Even though you're not going to get a whole lot of fanfare online, keep pushing, right? And make sure that if you find Black male mentees that are serious about taking notes, serious about wanting to ask you questions, get guidance on how they can advance, take the time to do so, because ain't nobody else doing it. You don't see any organizations centered around supporting Black male entrepreneurs. None of that. I definitely haven't seen any universities forming any programs around it. One of the interesting things you find is if and when that some attempt to do that, first thing that people bring up, Title IX. Right? They accuse you of sexism, maybe even misogyny, depending on how far they want to take the critique. But it's okay when it's a focus on Black women and girls. Right? Interesting. So in one of the poorest communities around, you got Black men who are not only, when employed, competitive, but even when entrepreneurs, competitive. But nobody shouts those brothers out. So anyway, tonight I'm talking a little bit about second-class citizenship, really third class. And I'll explain what I mean in a minute. But since we're on the subject of second-class citizenship, starting with this entrepreneurial kind of observation seemed appropriate. Shout out to BGS in the chat. What's good, right? So let's go. So what I'm talking about tonight, you saw the thumbnail. I'm talking about Black men and third-class citizenship. Now, what does that mean? Well, when you talk about second-class citizenship, which is a term, I think we've heard quite a bit over the years, it generally refers to a member of a minority group who is denied the social, political, and economic benefits of citizenship. Right? A person who is not accorded a fair share of respect, recognition, or consideration. Right? That's second-class citizenship. But what happens when you're not considered human for all intents and purposes? That's what I mean by third-class citizenship status. And I'm talking about this most particularly as it relates to law enforcement and the carceral industry, right? Let's look at a few cases, see what I mean. This is the first one. This is right here in Fresno. Title of this article, you can find it on abc30.com. It broke me. Family of Rashad Al-Hakim Jr. continues to call for justice in deadly crash. This is January 24th. Right? So Rashad Al-Hakim Jr.'s name and pictures were displayed all throughout the back of the Fresno County Courthouse on Monday. As the family continues to fight for justice, there was not a dry eye amongst Rashad's three little siblings. That it hurt me and it broke me, and I'll never ever get to grow up and be with my brother again, said I think it's Lyra Al-Hakim, Rashad's sister. Apologize if I messed that up. Rashad was the oldest of three. His siblings all tell me how they looked up to their big brother. Wherever I gotta go, I'm gonna be there by any means. Whatever we have to do as a family, we're gonna stick together, and we're gonna stick together and stay strong on this and fight throughout this, said Rashad Al-Hakim Sr., Rashad's father. Rashad died in October after crossing the street just outside of Hoover High School. 39-year-old Lisa Spores, this is a Caucasian woman, is accused of hitting and killing the 15-year-old freshman. In late December, the Fresno County District Attorney's Office filed a murder charge against Spores. Right? Now, her lawyers suggest this was not murder. Right? She just hit him, and that somehow wasn't murder. Right? And that mainly had to do, the question of murder had to do with the fact that she had taken medication. And so there was this question about whether or not she was under the influence, as it were, when she ran over this young man. Right? But the judge reduced the bail from more than $1 million to $150,000. Spore's attorney says the reason for the bail reduction is because of Spore's financial situation. According to Fresno District Attorney's Office, toxicology reports show Spores had illegal and prescription drugs in her system at the time of the crash. On Monday, I don't know how you pronounce that, Capitan, pointed to another police report that from a drug recognition expert on the day of the incident. This is his quote: "It is my opinion as a drug recognition expert that Spores was not under the influence of a drug or alcohol, and furthermore would be able to operate a motor vehicle safely," said Capitan while quoting the expert's report. Rashad's dad says he's still unsatisfied with the justice for his son. Now listen to this. First off, they let her turn herself in when she wanted to. Right? She turned herself in when she wanted to. And now she's just out on $150,000 bail. They didn't even try to fight for bail or stay high or really do too much. They didn't even try and fight for bail to stay high or really do too much. So I don't know what to say at this time, but I don't think it's right. This is coming from the father. This young man is run over, right? This woman gets out, but she has the luxury to turn herself in when she felt like it, according to reports. So we're not just talking about police when we talk about law enforcement, when we talk about, the criminal industry. We're talking also about the courts. We're talking about the system in and of itself and its treatment and perception of Black males. This young man was 15. That's the first one. Shout out to CR Frank. Appreciate that support. Let's look at another. This one you can find on Atlanta Black Star. And as usual, I'll post all the links to everything I cover in the description box once the video's over. Right? There's no excuse. Mentally ill man who couldn't afford $100 bail dies in Arkansas jail after starving in his cell. Family of a mentally ill man found dead inside an Arkansas jail wants its staff to be held accountable. In a federal lawsuit filed on January 13th, the family of Larry Eugene Price Jr., 51, says Sebastian County jail officers and the jail's medical provider neglected to address his worsening health, causing him to die from dehydration and malnutrition. Everybody in the jail is entitled to basic medical care. Everybody knew how sick he was, said Hank Balson, an attorney representing Price's family. Rodney Price filed a lawsuit on behalf of his deceased brother's estate against Turnkey Health, the company's psychiatrist, Dr. Juwan Lewis, Sebastian County, a jail nurse, and other unnamed defendants. There's no excuse for an atrocity like this to happen to a mentally ill man in an American jail. None. Attorneys for the family said in the lawsuit. Larry Price had a history of mental illness and homelessness and had repeat encounters with Fort Smith law enforcement officers. A year before his death, Price walked into a Fort Smith Police Department station and began acting irrationally by cursing at officers incoherently. The lawsuit says after refusing to leave the police station, officers arrested him. Balson said Larry Price's family were aware of his homelessness and disability. Balson says Larry Price had an aunt who would check on him occasionally, but because Price gets antsy, he would leave his aunt's home. Right? Price was charged with terroristic threats, and his bond was set for $1,000. Since Price could not afford the $100 10% of his issued bond, he was jailed. Balson claims Price's aunt and brother were unaware of his bail situation because jail staff would not share information related to his incarceration with them. He went on to say because Rodney Price was a former correctional officer, he felt Larry Price would be safer in jail than on the streets. Lawsuit alleges that throughout Price's incarceration, his mental disorder went untreated for months. He ate and drank fewer amounts of food over the course of his jail stay, resulting in severe malnutrition. He weighed 185 pounds in August 2020, and a year later, medical examiners found he weighed 121 pounds after his death. The lawsuit accuses Turnkey Health Clinics, LLC, the jail's medical provider, of neglecting his health. Now, just out of curiosity, when is the last time you've heard of somebody dying of malnutrition and dehydration in jail? That's a picture of him there, if you can see it. 121 pounds. Right? That's another case. Let's go to another. Another one from Atlanta Black Star. They tried to cover it up. Ohio cops stifle black man, shove handfuls of snow in his mouth, and ask him not to sue. I want to play the video, but I've been getting hit lately with copyright issues, so I'll just have to kind of read through it. An Ohio man is suing the city of Akron after one of its officers stuffed several handfuls of snow in his nose and mouth, limiting his ability to breathe during an arrest. He's still traumatized by it. He's still in counseling and has PTSD from the experience. Right? I don't think the video has anything to do with what's going on here. Sipplin, is the attorney representing Charles Hicks II, 28 years old. They filed a federal lawsuit on January 2nd accusing the city of Akron and 7 of its police officers of excessive force during an arrest, February 7th of 2021. The night of the incident, Akron police were called to the home of Hicks and his girlfriend for a domestic violence complaint. A police report says Hicks's girlfriend claimed he grabbed a knife and threatened her with it. Body camera video shows the officers arriving at the home. A shirtless Hicks greets the officers at the front door by yelling at them. Police say Hicks, who appeared unarmed, was under the influence of alcohol upon their arrival. As officers attempt to talk to Hicks, he repeatedly yells, "If you're going to kill me, just kill me." The officers slowly approached Hicks to apprehend him. Hicks is then wrestled to the snow-covered ground to be handcuffed. He's not resisting. This officer takes it upon himself to not once, not twice, but 3 times he takes handfuls of snow and stuffs it in my client's mouth and covers his mouth and nose. On the ground, 6 to 8 officers hold Hicks down by positioning themselves on top of him. As he's being handcuffed behind his back, Officer John Turner is seen grabbing snow from the ground and placing it into Hicks's face. Hicks can be heard gasping for air on body cam video and utters, "I can't breathe." Interesting. We've not heard that before. Hicks was taken to jail and charged with resisting arrest and domestic violence. After spending 3 days in jail, Sipplin says Hicks' domestic violence charge was dropped, but he pleaded no contest to resisting arrest. Sipplin claims within the lawsuit complaint that police offered Hicks a plea deal that would also drop the resisting arrest charge if he agreed not to sue the city in return. Given his lack of criminal history, he was not going to serve another day in jail. I advised him that that's a crappy deal and don't take it. Sipplin says the plea offer was a cover-up in the making by the city. They knew their officer did something wrong and they tried to cover it up, Sipplin said. When asked about allegations of excessive force and alleged cover-up, a spokesman for the city of Akron told Atlanta Black Star the city doesn't comment on pending litigation. Right? John Turner, the officer accused of stuffing snow in Hicks's mouth, was placed on administrative leave as police conducted an internal investigation soon after the incident. Turner resigned from the department in March 2021. Before the investigation was completed in May, police took no disciplinary action against him and no criminal charges were filed. Once the officer resigned, the investigation stopped. City prosecutor who determines which charges go against city police officers declined to formulate charges. You can see in this image right here, right? His hands are up. Has nothing in them. Interesting. All right. So far, we've looked at a young man who was ran over by a Caucasian woman. She was allowed to casually submit herself when she was ready to. We've seen from there the case of a mentally ill man who basically died of malnutrition and dehydration in jail. Seen a man arrested, stuffed snow in his nose and mouth to prevent him from breathing and offered him a plea deal to back up out of it. And then we got this last one I'm going to look at tonight. Just the last one. It was a human pinata. Video of, I don't know how to pronounce this brother's name. Is it Tyree? I don't know how to pronounce it. I apologize. I've only seen it written. I haven't watched any video on it. I know I'm butchering his name. But Nichols. Deadly police beating revealed in private release compared to Rodney King. Published January 24th. Family of Memphis man who died after a traffic stop saw the video showing the final moments of his life 2 weeks after his death. Memphis police shared body camera footage with Mr. Nichols' family and his attorneys in private viewing on Monday. They murdered him, his mother says. Members of his family were joined by attorneys Ben Crump, Antonio Romanucci, for a news conference. Moments after seeing video of the 29-year-old's deadly police encounter, what I saw in the video today was horrific. No father or mother should have to witness what I witnessed today. Attorneys and Nichols' family did not reveal graphic details of the video. Crump said Nichols could be heard calling for his mother 3 times before the police encounter ended. He also compared the incident to the 1991 beating of Rodney King, California. It's not the race of the police officer that is the determinable factor of the amount of excessive force that will be exerted. It's the race of the citizen. All my son was trying to do was get home. He was 2 minutes away when they stopped him. Ronnie Wells also disputed claims his son had drugs or a weapon when he encountered police. Our son ran because he was scared for his life. When you see the video, you'll see why he was scared for his life, and he was trying to get home to his mother and father. 5 Memphis police were fired on January 20th after an internal investigation found culpability in the death of Nichols. He was a human pinata for the police officers, Romanucci said. Police said Nichols was involved in a traffic stop on January 7th around 8:30 p.m. He was reportedly pulled over for reckless driving. The officers approached Nichols' vehicle and a confrontation occurred. Nichols then fled the traffic stop on foot before the officers followed him, leading to a second confrontation. Prior to finally apprehending him, police did not reveal specifics on what the confrontation entailed. After being detained, Nichols complained of having shortness of breath. He was then taken to the hospital by ambulance where he was listed in critical condition. There he is. Shout out to Seth's son. Appreciate that support. CR Frank. Appreciate that. That's what we're looking at. Good Lord. Nichols died on January 10th. A viral photo of him lying in a hospital bed with a bruised and swollen face showed the aftermath of his encounter with police. Crump said there was no official cause of death at this time. An independent autopsy is underway to reveal how Nichols died. Crump said local authorities plan to publicly release video of Nichols' police encounter within 1 to 2 weeks. Fired officers are Tadarius Bean, Demetrius Haley, Emmett Martin III, Desmond Mills Jr., and Justin Smith. The officers violated multiple department policies, including excessive force, due to duty to intervene and duty to render aid, the department said in a statement. See, some of the officers, if not all, are Black. Since Nichols' death, his family has demanded transparency from the Memphis Police Department in protests and memorial services. While no lawsuits have been filed at this time, Romanucci said a federal civil rights lawsuit will be filed soon for Nichols' death. My son was a good boy. He liked to skateboard. He didn't deserve what he got. Now he deserves justice, according to Ronnie Wells. Nichols' death has shaken the Memphis community as activist community leaders and the local skateboarding community reacted. There he's there, looking the way he's supposed to. So, let's set out a few different cases, and they're staggered in terms of the degree of threat. The reason I listed these out is because, as I said in the title of this video, we're considered third-class citizens in many instances. Our humanity is not prioritized or taken seriously. And in some instances, not even within the community itself. Some instances, not even among Black men. Right? That's part of the problem. But one of the things I wanted to do is go through what Black men have been arguing should happen in response to the various types of mistreatment, various types of violence against Black men from law enforcement, right? From the courts. Because there's different ways to be violent. You can be violent by being passive against those who have hurt or murdered Black folk. You can be violent by neglecting those in your charge, those who are imprisoned and jailed in your facilities. You can be directly violent in terms of police violence on an individual, right? There's all kinds of ways you can be violent. But I want to talk about this in relation to, here we go. There we go. To the black male political agenda, which, by the way, is up to 17 points. Right? I'm going to go ahead and put that link in the chat. For those who haven't visited it recently, It is an open document. It is a living document. It is constantly being added to, right? So you can continue to suggest things to add to the agenda at your whim. 17-point black male political agenda, still active. And we're going to look at some of the changes to number 6, criminal law reform and law enforcement. So again, black male political agenda is a document created by black men, list of suggested ideas about policy reform in the interests of black males. And you can see there are 17 different subpoints, right? 17 different areas, and 17 areas, and many of them have subpoints. Right? The 2 largest areas are family court reform with 16 subpoints and criminal law reform and law enforcement with 11 subpoints. Those are the 2 biggest areas. So according to black men directly, the 2 areas that need the most attention are family court and criminal law. And I think it's interesting to note that family court has more subpoint suggestions, right? Because when we talk about the ways in which institutions can initiate violence against a group that they don't deem human, they've weaponized much of this. And that's what I think we're looking at here. And I don't think it's an accident that both of the lists, out of all these lists, the 2 highest lists in terms of what black men suggest are causing them the most pain are family courts and criminal law reform. I find that extremely interesting. You got some people that say, well, if you got a woman pregnant or if you married her, it's just your fault. That is far too simplistic. Far too simplistic. When your life has been weaponized against you by the institutions that be, your natural human impulses to say want to have family or to have children are weaponized against you. That's essentially what we're looking at. So I've just read through cases where you have people who are more than likely innocent, right? Whose mere existence was used against them as a justification for the violence extended to them. But when it comes to family court reform, your natural desire to reproduce and have family. And this is particular. I mean, I think there's a general component, when you talk about men who want to have families, but when you talk about black men, the legacy of family production in the black community is such that you have generations of black men that wanted families, especially when you consider that during slavery, we weren't allowed to have them. I mean, if you were on a given plantation where the slave owner allowed you to marry, that was one thing. But truth be told, he could still take your daughter, your wife, or whomever else he wanted. Your mother, didn't matter. At his whim. You had nothing to say about it. So I don't find it an accident that up until the 1960s, the black community had such a high marriage rate. I think it was in response to the limited capacity we had to have families without them being under threat simply from the get-go. And I think black men were a serious part of that dynamic, wanting to have family. We come from a context where we didn't know where we came from. We're clearly a form of property. So to be able to be human enough to have family is an extremely revolutionary act in and of itself in an environment like this. So when we fast forward to 2023, I don't think it's an accident that family law reform is the biggest issue black men seem to have in regard to this list, which is a purely voluntary list of ideas extended by black men. Because the family's been weaponized against black men. I think whether intentional, subconscious, passed down, or just because they can, you have women in particular who are able to use institutions to chase men out of families. I've literally witnessed older women instruct younger women on how they can use this power in their interest. Whether it's because they were angry at a man that they were with, whether that anger was based in anything real or just something she felt, didn't matter. These institutions were at her disposal. They weren't at his. Neither the family court institution or the criminal law institutions are at black men's disposal. Neither one. And there are ways that both institutions can be used to levy proxy violence against black men simply because somebody wants to. But let's look briefly at criminal law reform and law enforcement. Right? So number 6, as you can see, law enforcement has historically barred black males from justice while at times being the source of injustice for black men. Part A, criminal sentencing reform, Black men should be arrested and sentenced to no greater degree than any other members of any race who commit the same crimes. So the first chart you can see there are women of all races getting shorter sentences than white men. Right? Percent difference in average sentence length for women versus white men over different reporting periods. You kind of see that breakdown. And then we get to the second chart, average sentence for white male and black male offenders, fiscal years 1999 to 2016. What we're looking at, and there are other charts verify this as well. Even for the same crimes, you have black men doing much more time, right? As far as sentencing. So if all women are doing less time than white men, what happens when we compare white men to black men? Right? Shout out to Mel. Appreciate that support in terms of the verbal support. So just a couple bullet points. I won't go through all this. I'm not going to read through it all. I really want you to take the time to glance through it. There's a lot of data here that might be of use to you. Right? This is a permanent space where it'll be left there. And the only way I'll change the data is if I'm updating it. Right? So it gives you information on black male offenders receiving longer sentences than similarly situated white male offenders. Right? So you can go through that data yourself and look at that in particular. Violence in an offender's criminal history does not appear to account for any of the demographic differences in sentencing. So you can go through those bullet points. Female offenders of all races receive shorter sentences than white male offenders during the post-report period as they had for the prior 4 periods. So you can go through that data and look at that. On average, they get about 65% less time for the same crimes, for committing the same crimes as men. But often when we say men, they're really talking about white men. Black men are treated very differently. Again, third-class status, right? The status of not being human, not just not being a citizen, different level. Licensing, law enforcement, right? That's part B. That's the second subset under this whole area. Law enforcement professionals have a revocable license that can be permanently stripped to keep them out of professions like lawyers, doctors, etc. Police are protected under the ruling of police protection from incriminating information or keeping their job. This can save plenty of black men. In other words, the idea being proposed is that law enforcement should have licenses, much like other professions, like lawyers and doctors. And if they behave like some of the officers that I talked about in the previous 4 articles, they should have that license revoked. Right? That's the suggestion there. Part C, proxy violence. Now, mind you, these are not listed in order of importance. They're listed in the order that they came in. I didn't write these. These are suggestions sent in by black men, most of whom who've had experience around the issues being raised. So we're not talking about armchair scholars who read about someone being arrested. We're talking about people who have often engaged this directly. I asked these brothers to share their ideas about what can be done differently based off of their own experiences. And of course, the experiences of family members and friends, I'm sure. And these are the suggestions they had. So part C, proxy violence, recognition of proxy violence as a criminal offense, punishable by no less than 50% of the primary offense prison time. So anybody that uses the police as a weapon against black men should be should be open to criminal offense. That's what that is. In qualifying immunity, this is part D. Often negotiated into union contracts. Qualified immunity is a legal principle that grants government officials, especially law enforcement, performing discretionary functions, immunity from civil suits unless the plaintiff shows that the official violated clearly established statutory or constitutional rights of which a reasonable person would have known. So ending qualified immunity means that police officers, like anybody else, should be vulnerable to civil suits, especially if their behavior warrants such. Part E, jury nullification. Jury nullification, U.S., generally occurs when members of a criminal trial jury believe that a defendant is guilty but choose to acquit the defendant anyway, because the jurors consider that the law itself is unjust, that the prosecutor has misapplied the law in the defendant's case, or that the potential punishment for breaking the law is too harsh. Some juries have also refused to convict due to their own prejudices in favor of the defendant. Jury nullification disproportionately affects black men, thus 30% of the jury should be black male. More specifically, when an ADOS or FBA man has to go to before a jury, 30% of that jury should be a jury of his peers. Right? So that's a suggestion there. Part F, false accusations. There should be clear and more stringent punishments for filing false charges against Black men, knowing that Black men are denigrated, stereotyped, and wrongfully convicted more than any other group and to greater degrees. Such accusations can have a more far-reaching and detrimental impact on Black men's lives. Black men are the most exonerated group due to false accusations, according to the National Registry of Exonerations, Newkirk Center for Science and Sociology, University of California, Irvine. They state African Americans are only 13% of the American population, but a majority of innocent defendants are wrongfully convicted of crimes and later exonerated. They constitute 47% of the 1,900 exonerations listed in the National Registry of Exonerations as of 2016, and the great majority of more than 1,800 additional innocent defendants who were framed and convicted of crimes and 15 large-scale police scandals and later cleared in group exonerations. Thus, whimsically dangerous charges with questionable/unreliable evidence or no evidence at all should be harshly dealt with to dissuade others from repeating this action against an already vulnerable population. Right? So whenever people say, the law is the law, it is what it is, you Black men have nothing to say, you have no ideas, no suggestions, that's bullshit. I've heard Black men most of my life making suggestions, but we've written it down. You don't have to like each one of them, but if you have something to add, please add. Send it to me. Extend it to me. I will be happy to add it. If it is of use, please make sure that you're able to document and cite data that reinforces your idea or suggestion. And the only criteria is that your idea improve the quality of life for Black boys and men. Part G, minimum age of criminal responsibility. Right? The minimum age of criminal responsibility in the U.S. is raised to at least 18 years of age. Most states do not have a lower age limit to where a person can be charged, prosecuted, sentenced, etc. for a statutory offense. The states do specify an age floor, mostly range between 7 and 10 years of age. Such legal precedents contribute greatly to the criminalization of Black boys. There's some, stats you can go check out yourself. In law enforcement collaboration prohibits state and local officers from using federal databases to search for prior criminal records when in process of questioning or apprehending a Black male. Officers more often than not decide their level of aggression based on one's alleged prior history. There is legislative precedent for such a law already, as California has adopted it under designation SB 54 to protect illegal immigrants. What happens if they look you up and confuse you for someone else and decide to extend even more aggression towards you? Right? There are all kinds of reasons that needs to be called into question. They got letter I, end arbitrary stop and frisk. I think that speaks for itself. This is one Dennis Sperling helped us out with, I believe. Enactment of legislation abating the U.S. Supreme Court case Terry versus Ohio 392, U.S. 1, 1968, which is a violation of the 4th and 14th Amendment and the line of cases that flow from Terry. Right? I'll let you go through that yourself, but it deals with ending arbitrary stop and frisk, which we know became popular in New York, but was spread nationally in record time, and in many ways is still in use. So we got Part J, self-finance police liability insurance. Require police officers to take out individual policies of liability insurance to cover intentional and negligent actions while performing their duties as peace officers, thereby holding individual officers personally accountable and limiting the exposure to money judgments the taxpayer must bear. Okay. Now, some people who wished to be identified, or you can see whenever you see the footnote number at the end, you can tell that goes to a certain person. You don't have to reveal your name. If you want to be anonymous, you can send that in. If you want your name shown, I will usually footnote it. And that way people can actually go to the footnote citation and see the names of people who've contributed. It is entirely up to you. To me, the idea just needs to be a good one. And you need to have information to back your point. That's really all we're requiring at this point for the most part. Some of them don't have any stats or data linked to it. But that was from, I think, earlier on. As we've grown, we've kind of required that more. But, still a good idea is a good idea. Retribution, Part K. Retribution for corrupt systemic sentencing practices. Black people, black men especially, are 7.5 times more likely to be wrongfully convicted. Right? 7.5 times more likely. In the report, Race and Wrongful Convictions in the United States 2022 reviewed the cases of 3,200 innocent defendants exonerated in the United States since 1989. Black people, the researchers found, were 7 times more likely to be wrongfully convicted, or more likely to be targets of police misconduct, and more likely to be in prison longer before being exonerated. You have police officers that know if they mess with you, that there's less of a chance that you're really going to be able to secure defense. Now, if you have people that die egregiously on camera, that's one thing. But if you're arbitrarily interrogated, messed with, bullied, harassed, and incarcerated by a police officer, especially if you look at the income and wealth status of black communities, for the most part, they know most people aren't going to be able to afford to do much about it. You might even have to accept a plea deal for something you didn't do at all, simply because they decided to arrest you. Right? Says black people were overrepresented in every category of the 1,167 wrongful murder convictions in the registry's database. African Americans constituted 56% of all death sentence exonerees, 55% of wrongful murder convictions resulting in life imprisonment, and 54% of wrongful murder convictions in which exonerees were sentenced to imprisonment for terms of years. Right? You can look at that data. In essence, it says the federal government incentivized cities and states to write more strict laws and build more prisons. The states also proceeded to write more strict laws and build more prisons. For-profit private prisons contract with state governments to keep prisons at least 90% full. So now you see there's an incentive, right, to harass and incarcerate. And why not do it to a population that, for the most part, can't afford to do much about it, particularly individual men. Judges sentence innocent people or levy excessive felony sentences against plaintiffs for minor crimes and misdemeanors while collecting kickbacks. Prosecutors brag about high prosecution rates often orchestrated by offering plea deals with sentences that are excessive in punishment. Expert testimony is used to convict innocent people. Right? As a consequence of this dynamic, state and federal government should have to pay $1 million per year to any black male who is exonerated of crimes he didn't commit. For-profit private prisons should have to pay the exonerated 10% of the prison's revenue, not profits, for every year the exonerated was in their prison. Also, prison executives and investors should be liquidated of their ownership of the prison and sentenced to 25 years to life. Judges should be disbarred, sentenced to 25 years to life, and have to pay damages of $150,000 to the exonerated. Prosecutors should be disbarred and have to pay damages of $150,000 to the exonerated. Expert witnesses hired by the prosecutors should lose their professional license, be barred from court proceedings, be sentenced to 25 years to life, and have to pay damages of $150,000 to the exonerated. Right? So why did I do this tonight? All I'm really saying is that all the stuff that we're talking about in regard to black men now, good or bad, right? It doesn't matter to me what we're talking about. We can't forget the reality hasn't changed in terms of the quality of life for many black men here. I think it's one of the underlying reasons that even Passport Bros is so popular. It's not just about women. If you listen to Dr. Ronald Neal's latest streams, he's in Africa right now, if I'm not mistaken. He did a video, I want to say yesterday, from the streets of, I forget what country he went to. He visited there before. He decided to go back and pay more attention to it. He enjoyed it there. He said it changed his life. Said Brazil changed his life. But I think part of the reason that we're talking about travel has to also do with being treated as a human being. Or people's first assumption at viewing you isn't that you're a criminal or that you are worthy of being locked up indefinitely because it profits them. Shout out to MS Delta Guy. Appreciate that generous support. Just keep educating and bringing information. Much appreciated, sir. Thank you. Right. So we're looking at travel is not just, I think people are comfortable with dismissing black men's interests and worldview to its lowest common denominator, right? I think the popular, kind of view that I'm hearing online now is that black men are just really interested in prostitutes. And that's it. And I think that is a gross mischaracterization of what Black men are actually saying. And I don't apologize for Black men that are looking for sex. We're grown. Let's be real. Women and men have been going to other countries for sex for freaking generations. Let's stop this bullshit. We're grown. But there are plenty of brothers doing it for all kinds of reasons. And I believe from the discussions that I've had with brothers who've traveled quite a bit, you'd be surprised how often I hear them actually start to wax sentimental about being somewhere and not feeling like they're under threat simply because they're there. That, when police go, I remember Richard Pryor talking about this in the 1970s when he went to Africa. He said, I would hear police sirens and I just knew they weren't coming for me. I don't think that's something you can properly grasp until you feel it, until you experience it yourself. I know every time I'm driving and I hear police sirens going off behind, sometimes even ambulance, if I'm not paying attention, my very first subconscious reaction is, oh shit. Because I know it's very possible. It's not hyperbole to say it's possible I won't return home simply because. There's a damn near ritual around telling our sons how to handle being stopped by the police, where to put their hands on the steering wheel so as not to generate fear. Or at least, allow an officer to use that as a justification to abuse and or kill you and say he was a threat. This is the quality of life. This is what we've grown so used to it. In certain parts of YouTube, I don't even hear Black men talk about these kinds of issues anymore. I think it's just par for the course. It's part of our reality. We don't think about it. But I got brothers, my accountant, brothers I've gone to school with, brothers I've met just casually, some of whom I met since I started doing my work online, who live all over the world. And I'm telling you, one of the things I hear most when I talk to these brothers is the level of calm. The level of calm in their voices. They are relaxed in a way I've never seen before. Shout out to Randall Lewis for the support on the Cash App. Never seen. And some of those brothers I've known for years. There was a tenseness about them that I just took for granted until I heard them for the first time with nothing but calm in their voice. And to hear that be dismissed as nothing but sex, I think is just offensive. I think it further denies the humanity of Black men. It reduces us to something that doesn't capture what the hell we're actually talking about. See, these brothers didn't send in these lists of ideas just because they had time and they felt like doing it. No, they sent it in because they actually do want to experience a different quality of life. And they want their sons to. I want my son to. So I just want to kind of put some of this on the table, because I think we've grown to take a lot of this mistreatment for granted. We've accepted a quality of life that we shouldn't. And I think we need to go about the business of challenging that on multiple fronts. Right? Propose the policies we want to see. Push to see them enacted. Share this information with whomever we can at whatever opportunity we can. But if that also means traveling to find peace, you know what? God damn it, do it. Do it. It's time. It is really time. So just wanted to get that off my chest. I appreciate those of you who came through. I apologize for not catching all of the posts. I always go through them afterwards, the live chat. So if I missed anything, I apologize. 275 watching. Please make sure you hit the like button if you can't donate and support the show, so we can end the video strong. Let me know if you have any other thoughts, any other experiences to add. And if you want to add something to the Black male political agenda, please go ahead and send it to me. Easiest way you can do that is to extend it to my email address. Where'd it go? Which you can find at Hasan@thasanjohnson.org. Right? So Hasan is spelled with one S, Hasan. Hasan@thasanjohnson.org. If you have any suggestions, any policy ideas, please send them there. Otherwise, share the video, share the work, share the ideas so that we can continue to build this and do whatever you have to do to find the peace you need, even if you don't think you need it. Discover it, figure it out, experience it, put yourself in different places. And the moment you find that peace, rehearse that like a prayer. I don't care what it is, as long as you're not hurting anybody, including yourself. Wherever that peace comes from. Shout out to Dusty Nuts. Appreciate that support. But we got to rehearse it, man. We got to find it wherever it is. And whatever brings you peace, I don't care how it looks to other people. Enjoy it. Do what you got to do to remind yourself that life is not limited to the stress that we experience. Families, relationships, work environments, doesn't matter. Get to the point where you can find that peace. And if you can live it, this is one of the reasons that I've been talking to my son for years about figuring out what he wants to do. I told him, I don't want you to just jump into a job after high school and just have to work. That's one way. I want you to actually be able to reflect on what you want to do. See, I look at it like my grandfathers killed themselves doing things they hated so that hopefully I can actually do something that brings me peace, that falls in line with my life mission and does enough for me to support my family in the midst of all of that. I want that for you. I want that for your sons, and any other black men you're acquainted with. You got to find it. Shout out to Bill Reed. Appreciate the support. Bill says, Doc, I was introduced to Dr. Curry's The Man Not via your broadcast. Beautiful. Beautiful. All right. Share the book. Share the ideas. I'm working on a book now. Just signed with Rutledge. So I have a different teaching schedule. So it means that some of my 5 o'clock shows are going to be repositioned because of that new teaching schedule. And I am writing. So, y'all bear with me. I appreciate the support for this late broadcast and I hope y'all have a good one. Again, use the comment section. Let us know what's on your mind. Peace.